Giant fans that have supported us for more than 30 years at Giant Stadium, for all those years in Yankee Stadium, and some of you even back to the Polo Grounds. This is for you. This is for you.
Listen to me. Okay. The rest of your life, man, nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
With the second pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Saquon Barkley, running back, Penn State.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Giants Guys. This is John Fennelly, your host, and we'll be recapping the Giants' thrilling 32-31 victory in Week 3 over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Giants are now 1-2, thanks to the comeback victory led by rookie quarterback Daniel Jones, who is making his first NFL start. The Giants avoided the dreaded 0-3 start thanks to Jones's heroics, and they got a little help from the Tampa football gods. We all know what that's like. Giant fans who remember the Super Bowl 25 wide right kick by Scott Norwood. Well, this time it was Matt Gay who went wide right at the end of the game, giving the Giants a win. Otherwise, the Giants would be 0-3, and the story right now would naturally be a whole lot different. Storyline number 1. How about Daniel Jones? What's the Daniel Jones effect? Well, the Giants changed the entire narrative of their season, and maybe a little bit more, by switching to Jones. They had a different look. Your mother. The Giants are now 1-2 on the season, thanks to Daniel Jones making his first NFL start and making it count. They avoided their dreaded 0-3 start, thanks to Jones's heroics and a little bit of help from the Tampa football gods. They should have lost this game. Let's face it. 34-yard field goal is basically an extra point. Tampa Bay kicker Matt Gay had an off day, pushed it wide right. We've heard that before. Otherwise, the Giants be 0-3, and the story right now would be much different, naturally. The big storyline on the day, of course, was Jones. The Giants made the change from Manning to Jones, Eli Manning to Jones last week, and the entire narrative of this season has changed just by making this switch. They look like a completely different team out there on offense last Sunday. Jones's performance, which we'll get into in a little bit, overshadows all the blemishes this team has at the moment and will allow them to rectify things behind the scenes while Jones keeps the population entertained. They've gone from a team that wanted to compete right now to one that's rebuilding, thank God, as we all would say. And in the process, Dave Gettleman and Pat Shermer bought themselves another year by making this decision. It wasn't an easy one, but it looks like it might have been the right one. Now, the Giants, they could have a budding star here in Jones. Obviously, he's looks like a budding star. He handles himself properly. I mean, he's just too good to be true when you think about it. And I know it's just one game, but he could inject life into this dormant team, just like Lamar Jackson did in Baltimore, just like Deshaun Watson did in Houston, just like, dare I say it, Patrick Mahomes did in Kansas City. Those aren't perfect teams by any stretch, but they'll all be in the playoffs this year. And it's all because they went all in on offense. Here's some Jones's stats that you might find interesting. He was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. His first game, he's Player of the Week. Wonderful. The Jones-led victory over the Bucs was just the second in Giants history in which they overcame a halftime deficit of at least 18 points. On October 30th, 1949, that's 70 years ago to you and me, they trailed the Chicago Cardinals. The Cardinals were still in Chicago. That's how long ago it was. after 2 quarters, 28-7. But they went on to a 34-10 surge in the second half and won the game 41-34. Before Sunday, the Giants had lost 138 consecutive games in which they had trailed by at least 18 points. That's very hard to do and very hard to believe when you think about it. Jones completed 23 of 36 passes for 336 yards. He had 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, and he ran for a pair of 7-yard touchdown runs. He led the team with 28 rushing yards on 4 carries, and he's the first NFL quarterback to throw for at least 336 yards in his starting debut since Green Bay's Scott Tolzien passed for 339 yards in 2013 against the Giants at MetLife Stadium. You remember that. Tolzien, I don't even know if he played another game after that. Jones was the first Giants quarterback to rush for 2 touchdowns in a game since Jeff Hostetler on November 10, 1991. He had runs of 47 and 4 yards in a 21-14 victory against the Cardinals. Wow, the Cardinals are taking a beating here. And he's the first with 2 rushing touchdowns in a season since Kerry Collins in 1999. I do not remember that. I don't know if you do. I don't remember Kerry Collins running for anything, except for his life. Jones was the first quarterback with at least 2 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns in a game since November 28, 1948. Wow. That's a long time ago. Charlie Connolly, of all people, threw 2 scoring passes of 14 yards to Ray Poole and 23 yards to Bill Swiacki and scored on runs of 1 and 14 yards against the Boston Yankees. I bet you a lot of you didn't even know there was a team called the Boston Yankees. I don't even know who they became. Jones was just the second quarterback since the 1970 merger, that I remember, to throw for at least 300 yards and 2 touchdowns and run for 2 scores in his starting debut. The first was Detroit's Eric Hipple. Was he with Detroit or Chicago? No, Detroit. It was against Chicago. He passed for 336 yards in that game, was responsible for 6 total touchdowns, 4 passing and 2 rushing, in a 48-17 victory over the Chicago Bears in 1981. Jones and Hipple are the only 2 quarterbacks since the merger with multiple touchdown passes and multiple rush touchdowns in their first start. Wow. The last rookie quarterback to do so was Josh Allen of Buffalo last year. He threw for 3 scores and ran for 2 against Miami. Jones was the first quarterback to lead the Giants in rushing since October 1st, 2000, when Kerry Collins ran for 19 yards at a loss at Tennessee. Wow. That's amazing. That's almost 20 years ago. The Giants' 2 leading rushers in Tampa were Jones and wide receiver Sterling Shepard. It was the first time since the 1970 merger they had both a quarterback and a wideout with more rushing yards than any running back. And those are the Jones stats. I hope I didn't stutter too much in doing that. My number 2, but we're making it number 2 today. The Saquon Barkley injury. Barkley left the game with an injury in the first half when Bucs rookie safety Mike Edwards fell on his ankle after he caught a pass. He was assisted from the field into the locker room by 2 Giants staffers, and he was in obvious pain. He did come back in the second half, no uniform, no pads naturally, on crutches and in a walking boot. Later it was revealed that he had a high ankle sprain and he could be out as long as 8 weeks. He's getting a second opinion this week, but that's not expected to change his prognosis, and I wouldn't imagine it would. High ankle sprains are very tricky. We saw that with Olivier Vernon here last year. He was out for 5-6 weeks. I mean, it's going to be 6 weeks minimum, I think, with him. The right thing to do, in my opinion, with Barkley is to put him on IR. This way, he heals properly. You don't bring him back too soon. You don't rush him back. They can free up a roster spot. Players on short-term IR can't practice for the first 6 weeks anyway, so they'll keep him off his feet for 6 weeks. Then in the last 2 weeks, they can hustle him up and get him back, gradually get him back into practice, and maybe get him back by week 11. But don't rush him back so he can re-injure himself. I mean, they got to be smart with this. And if he's the kind of guy I think would say, "I'm ready, coach," after 3 weeks, and then put him back out there, and maybe he'll get hurt again. The team's not really going anywhere this year. I mean, if people have delusions of grandeur, I don't know if they think they are going somewhere. I don't think they're going anywhere. They can make it without him. They'll have to try anyway. But re-injuring him, look at Todd Gurley. I mean, the guy who's going to have a great career. He's kind of done when you think about it. He's not going to be the same. He's not the same right now. You don't need to take the risk with Barkley. You spent a lot of draft capital on him, a number 2 overall pick. Put him on the shelf until he's fully healthy. That's basically all I have to say about that. I know they won't do it, but that's what they should do. All right, now it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Tampa Bay game. The good, obviously, Daniel Jones, his mobility and accuracy are pretty much a game changer for the Giants. You saw that. Let's face it, Eli Manning could not make many or any of the plays that Jones made in Sunday's game. Not only the 2 rushing TDs, but the fact that his mobility allowed him to sidestep pressure, keep the ball a little bit longer, and see the plays through. No checking down. He watched the plays develop in front of him, and he moved around accordingly, bought himself some time, and made the throws. Manning was getting rid of the ball right away in some cases. He had to check down because he couldn't buy himself any time. And a lot of people said it. He was gun shy after a while. He didn't really want to get hit, and you can't blame him. I mean, he was getting crushed there for a while. The receivers also. This is the back end of that. The receivers now know that they have a quarterback that can buy time and they can run themselves into the open, knowing that Jones could be looking to throw their way. Ingram's emerged as a top T in this league, top tight end in this league. Only Travis Kelce right now has more receiving yards than he does when it comes to tight ends. Against Tampa, he caught 6 of 8 targets for 113 yards. He had that 75-yard TD catch and run, which was such a bang-bang play. It's you didn't even see him catch the ball. The next thing you know, he was gone. Shepard was back in the lineup. He caught 7 of 9 targets for 100 yards on the button. He had that perfect pass by Jones thrown his way for a touchdown in the right corner of the end zone, front part of the end zone. That was a great play. Jones was under pressure. He just laid that ball out there, and it was only Shepard could get the ball. That's the kind of pass. I mean, that's just the kind of savvy that Jones has when it comes to finding guys open. I mean, he made some mistakes too. Obviously, he had 2 fumbles, and but he was strip sacked, so I'm not too concerned about that. He was hit. Not too many quarterbacks hang on to the ball when they get hit, especially this Shaq Barrett was left to his own vices out there. He's just flying in. Let's get back to the good rookie Darius Slayton. What a debut he had. 3 catches, 82 yards, including a 46-yarder. He also provided that key downfield block on that Ingram TD run. So, he's off to a good start, too. On the defensive side of the ball, boy. Well, they looked a lot better in the second half. I don't know why this getting off to slow starts, but once they tightened up the pass coverage, they looked like a real defense. Pass rush got to Jameis Winston a couple of times. Marcus Golden had 2 sacks. O'Shane Ximines had another sack and a half, I believe. Both came to life in this game. Lorenzo Carter, he's still working on it, I guess. Dexter Lawrence had a nice game, the other rookie, defensive tackle. He had a sack. We got to see his sack dance. He blocked a point after attempt, which ended up being actually the difference in the game, 1 point, right? Biggest takeaway I had on defense was to play and poise the rookie inside linebacker Ryan Connolly, a 5th-round draft pick. Every once in a while, you find a guy in the 5th round, right? And it looks like the Giants may have found 2 in Connolly and Slayton. So this draft, you could really measure this draft by the success they had in the late rounds there. It's pretty good. The bad, well, there's quite a bit of bad here. The defense got into a hole again. Just wide open passes down the middle of the field. I don't know how long this is going to go on, but it's just got to stop. I think they shored it up a little bit in the second half, but it's just got to stop. It won't matter much if they could score over 30 points a game. When you look at Kansas City and Baltimore and the Rams and some of these teams, that's the game now. I know you win championships with defense, but you establish yourself on offense first. And I think some of these teams, you see, their defenses aren't that great, but they always, they get the ball last. They're going to win the game. And, the Giants could turn into one of those teams. I'm not saying Jones is in the class of Patrick Mahomes now, but hey, you never know. The way he looked, he certainly runs with the football better than Mahomes. Mahomes has a better arm. But, time will tell. When it comes to taking a team down on a drive, Jones could end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, he's just got that knack. It's hard to put your finger on what he's got. Back to the bad, though. The running game. Even with Barkley, it was very sluggish. I know Todd Bowles, who's now the defensive coordinator down in Tampa, had dialed up a pretty good game plan to stop him. He was hell-bent on stopping the run all day against the Giants, except for when it counted. And that meant Jones. They left him unattended to run up the middle to win the game. But Barkley and Wayne Gallman carried the ball for a total of 23 yards between the two of them. And that's just not the Giants. That's just not Giant football. Some injuries to take away from the game. They had quite a number of injuries, Barkley being the most significant. But they lost inside linebacker and their defensive captain, Alec Ogletree. When he went out of the game, Connolly had to put the radio set on in his helmet. And he actually did a good job. I mean, I would not be against him playing. He started the game, played, I think, 92% of the snaps. I wouldn't be against him doing that every game. I'm not a big fan of Ogletree. I don't think he's played that well since he's gotten here. He hasn't been himself. He used to be a very good run stopper. We're not seeing that. I think Connolly has got a better nose for the football. I think he's better at diagnosing plays. And he's only a rookie. I mean, in camp, defensive coordinator James Betcher had already pointed out that Connolly already knew the defense better than most of the guys who had been playing in it for a long time. So that's got to tell you something. So they have a lot of confidence in him. I believe he's in the middle there to stay. He is not going to miss another game. He's going to start every game. Other injuries, Tay Davis, who is one of the very few inside linebackers they have. He's got a concussion. He didn't practice again today. They forced the Giants to re-sign Nate Stupar. I'm not even going to comment on that. Russell Shepard has a bad foot, and Olsen Pierre has a knee injury, but we'll see about those two guys. Now, here we go. The ugly. And it's pretty ugly, some of the ugly stuff. Janoris Jenkins, the jackrabbit, last week, shot his mouth off about he can't cover somebody for 10 seconds. He took a swipe at the pass rush and, the defensive line. He had one of the worst games of any Giant of all time against Mike Evans. I know Mike Evans is 6'5". Okay, I know he's a Pro Bowl receiver, but still, Jenkins could not cover him at all. Evans had 8 receptions for 190 yards and 3 TDs. Much of it was in the first half. 146 of that was in the first half. It's the highest receiving yardage total against the Giants by a player since Washington's Henry Ellard had 197 yards in 1994. That's 25 years. So, this game, there was a lot of firsts in a long time in this game. And that was one of them. That's not one of the good ones either. Right now, Jenkins has a 140.2 passer rating against him on 26 targets. That's the third worst in the NFL. DeAndre Baker, the rookie, is right behind him with a 137.5 rating, but he played fairly well on Sunday. he was primarily assigned to Chris Godwin, who was the hot receiver coming in. Evans got off to a slow start the first 2 weeks. He was sick. Godwin came in. He was the hot receiver. He only got 4 targets. He caught 3 of them for 40 yards. But, Baker did a pretty good job on Godwin when he was on him. So I'll take that anytime. Nate Solder was a negative in this game. He allowed, right now for the season, he's allowed 14 pressures, 9 hurries, 3 sacks. I think it should be 4 sacks because Shaq Barrett, who was a former backup with the Denver Broncos, who's now with Tampa Bay. The Giants had some interest in him, I think, in free agency. But he ended up signing with Tampa. He burned Solder, I think, big time 4 times. He was offsides a few times, too. Just to make an excuse for Solder, Barrett was called for offsides on one play, but I think he was offsides maybe on 2 others, too. But still, Solder couldn't handle it. He can't handle the speed. Neither could Eric Flowers. So the Giants have to get themselves some tackles that can handle some speed here. All right, so what do they do about these 2 guys? Well, Jenkins could be traded at the trade deadline or before. I mean, they almost did it last year. And Solder had a slow start last year. He's coming off an injury this year, an off-season surgery, rather, for his ankle. So maybe he's just catching up. He didn't have much of a training camp. They were trying to keep him out, keep him fresh. So hopefully he'll rally and come back. But, his contract and his age, they make him a target for replacement. He's 31 now. The Giants have to be looking offensive tackle. They only have 3 on the roster, really. I mean, there's others that could play out there, but it's just Solder and Remmers. Those are your starters. And this kid, Chris Slade. I mean, they don't have a lot of options there. So Jenkins, is also 30. His cap hit this year is $14.75 million. That's second behind Eli Manning. Solder has 2 more years on his contract. He signed that 4-year, $62 million. So you can't really trade him. But, they have more options at corner. So if they try to trade Jenkins, Sam Beal could be coming back midseason off IR. And Corey Ballantyne showed some promise, but these guys are green. I don't know if the Giants would want to do that. They'll probably take a dead cap hit. I don't know exactly how much it was on Jenkins for next year. So we'll see. But I wouldn't be shocked if they trade him. Going forward, some good news. Golden Tate will be coming back after this week. That should augment the wide receiving core. Tate's a seasoned player, as we know. He does 2 things very well. Catches the football when you throw it to him. That's a plus. And he usually gets past the chains when he does it. He's a first down machine. And he makes the first tackle a miss, which he's the best in the NFL at that. Combine him with the rest of the group, Sterling Shepard, Slayton, Cody Latimer, who should be coming back from a concussion, and Ingram, and you got yourself a pretty good receiving core. I mean, Jones should have a lot to work with. At the running back position, they're going to use Gallman as the primary now. He can do all the fundamental tasks that Barkley can do. He's a good blocker. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He just doesn't have the explosiveness that Barkley does. The elusiveness and explosiveness. So don't expect greatness from him. But I think he could do a pretty decent job. They're going to bring back Jonathan Hillman off the practice squad, it looks. They only had some depth and relief. But Pat Shurmur said, he pretty much sounded like if Barkley's going to be out for that extended period of time, they could look for some external help. And that should be able to help them. I don't know who's out there at this point in time, but somebody mentioned C.J. Anderson or Orleans Darkwa could be a guy too, but that's from the last coaching staff. I don't know what the Giants would see in him now. And that's all we have for today, the Giants guys. Craig will be back soon. Also on Fridays, I will be doing my gambling and fantasy prediction show, which should be very interesting. Hopefully you'll tune in for that. And once again, this is the Giants Guys, John Fennelly here, and thanks for listening.